Welcome on in. I know everyone is looking forward to Tears of the Kingdom, but while we kind of wait, I thought it'd be fun to discuss one of the decks that I'm actually more proud of. And that, of course, is Thrun, Breaker of Silence. So, I was originally very intrigued about this commander. Or at least the legendary creature. I wanted to build something that was, in fact, kind of like a Voltron deck. However, I wasn't exactly sure how to do it. And then Prof from Tolarian Community College came around and came up with the Thrun Smash, which is what you see here. And then it all kind of clicked together. So, for those of you who don't know, Thrun, Breaker of Silence is a 5 mana, double green and 3 colorless, 5/5. Spell cannot be countered. It has trample. Cannot be countered, or it cannot be target of non-green spells. Your opponent's control or abilities from non-green sources your opponent's control, and during your turn it is indestructible, making it a very sticky boy. So Prof did a fantastic job, I will say, of developing a $45 budget commander deck utilizing the best strengths of Thrun, which is it's mono green, you're allowed to ramp, and how do you Voltron in green? Well, you put a bunch of auras on him. So for instance, you would put Alpha Authority, you would put Ancestral Mask, you'll put Audacity, Blanchwood Armor, but you put the Umbras on here. Colossification was the big card that he was very hyped about, which is enchanted creature gets +20/+20. You have Hydra's Growth, In Search of Greatness for ramp, and then Lure, which is if there were specific cards in here that, or specific cards or creatures that you wanted to get rid of, but obviously the defending player was not going to block with them, you would cast Lure on Thrun, and then they would have to they would be forced to block with them if they were like either mana dorks or had some sort of kind of like support engine for their greater schemes. Ordeal of Annihilea gave you some additional ramp. Prodigious Growth, which I thought was kind of like unnecessary, but it was +7/+7 with trample, which is kind of funny that it's only 1 mana less than Colossification. But yeah, so the entire idea of this deck was bring Thrun out, just pump as much power that you could into him, and then swing for victory. And honestly, for simplicity's sake, it worked very well. However, even in Prof's own video, he said there was room for improvement, and he did very much stick to the $45 idea of this deck. So like basically this was a commander precon, but it was better than like precons that you would find in your LGS, and therefore like you would actually like have a pretty good time. But he did also provide some options to upgrade it even further if you so choose to do so. So some of it was replacing lure. He suggested adding Bearer Umbra. So Bearer Umbra, chain creature gets +2/+2, and whenever it attacks, you untap all lands. So stuff like that. He also suggested an alternate win condition and a few other things in order to like make it a little bit better. However, I kind of went in a different direction with this. So as you can see here, this is my final version of Thrun, and I call it Thrun in the Jungle, kind of similar to George of the Jungle. And looking at it, I had some various thoughts and what I think would be just kind of like overall better cards in order to kind of like get it moving a little bit along without having to rely on so many mana dorks and other ramping spells. So the first thing that I did was he has both Arbor Elf, Elvish Mystic, and Llanowar Elves on here, which honestly I feel is just absolutely too much. We're mono green. We don't like green is absolutely the best color of ramping. There's no need to have so much ramp, especially because your curve is so low to the ground. So what I did was I ended up cutting Arbor Elf. I thought about keeping it in because it has great synergy with Wild Growth and Overgrowth and Fertile Ground, but I ended up cutting Fertile Ground, and I'll talk about that later. So really, like, it basically didn't do as much as I was hoping, and so I just kind of like I ended up with just like landing on Elvish Mystic and cutting both Arbor Elf and Llanowar Elves. The second thing I did was I cut the lands. So we're in mono green. We have a ton of ramping availability, and so therefore there was absolutely no reason to have 38 lands. Like, I started at 35, so I cut 3 initially, and then I ended up cutting another 2. So I'm down to 33 lands over here. I kept Rogue's Passage. I cut Myriad Landscape because I'm not a big fan of Myriad Landscape. I find it just more clunky than anything because it comes into play tapped, and then you have to spend essentially 3 mana in order to bring up another 2 basic lands. So honestly, I don't really enjoy Myriad Landscape. I don't find it to be like really good ramp, and so like eventually I just ended up cutting it. Rogue's Passage, really good card if like you really need to just sneak Thrun in, like it's great. However, I thought that there were some other things that could go in here. So I added Reliquary Tower and Witch's Clinic. So Witch's Clinic, Reliquary Tower, not too expensive. It's about anywhere about like $3 to $5. Basically, it just allows you to have no maximum hand size. Really good card. Witch's Clinic is something that I also noticed about this deck while I was playing it, is that especially in Voltron decks, you will swing with a giant beast of a creature. However, you then leave yourself open after you swing with it. And then you have your support creatures and everything, but you really don't want to block with them if you don't have to. Witch's Clinic kind of solves that problem, because for 2 mana and you tap it, so essentially 3 lands total, unless you have Wild Growth or Overgrowth. Target commander, which is going to be the Voltron that you're going to be doing, gains lifelink until end of turn. So while you're swinging with a, I don't know, easily 10-10, 15-15 Thrun that your opponents are going to be forced to block because they don't want to take all that commander damage, you are gaining that much life. So it doesn't matter if your opponents like do a crackback for you for 10 life as well, because most of their blockers are going to be dead, and which you're still going to be able to do at least some damage unless they really are fearful of commander damage. And then during that entire time, you're gaining life thanks to Witch's Clinic. So that was one of the big things that I changed on here, was that like you need something to kind of secure your defenses after you attack with Thrun, which essentially should be like every turn. So going over artifacts, Arcane Signet, I did not understand why he included Arcane Signet here, like, because basically you're paying 2 mana in order to like gain 1 mana, like a mana rock. To me, this doesn't make any sense. Like, you're mono green, you have ramp, you like this card slot can be used for something else. Blackblade for Forged, Fire Shrieker, all great cards. Soul Ring I kept in. Strata Scythe I was thinking about, but I ended up switching out to something else. And Thran Power Suit, I was very underwhelmed. So Thran Power Suit has a creep creature gets +1/+1 for each aura and equipment attached to it, and has Ward 2. Well, Thrun is already got a lot of evasion, and so the Ward 2 really doesn't like help much at all. But while playing this deck, I found that I would put a lot of like really great power into Thrun, but I would also like put other things into Thrun. So like maybe I would get like maybe 2 or maybe a third enchantment in here. So you're talking about like Thran Power Suit giving him like +3/+3. Which is like fine, I guess, but like really it was just not as like hype as it kind of like seemed to be, and so like I ended up cutting it, and you'll kind of just see where my thinking was. As far as creatures, Acidic Slime, it's 5 mana for a 2/2, and it has the additional payoff that you can destroy an artifact, enchantment, or land. Okay. Excuse me. I'm not impressed. I went with something else. Arbor Elf, I already talked about, where I didn't want as many mana dorks. Bellowing Tangleworm, this was one of the last cards that I ended up cutting. Intimidate is very interesting. If you have it out, excuse me, any player that isn't running green or artifacts, you're now enemy number 1. And so you either have to be already like swinging for them for death, or like you got to be prepared to like deal with the crackback, or whatever else that they're going to be dealing with. So I just kind of felt like this was like, I understand this is like really good evasion for Thrun. The one difficulty of Thrun that I've definitely found is he can only swing at one player at a time. So you don't want to make yourself enemy number 1 more than you already are. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe my experience is different than yours. Excuse me. But that's just kind of like the mentality that I got. Otherwise, Eidolon of Blossoms is an excellent card. Elvish Mystic I kept. Forgotten Ancient is also a wonderful card on here. Same with Kami of Transience, especially because we're really playing so many enchantments. We have 28 enchantments in this deck. Llanowar Elves I cut, being a mana dork. Nylea's Colossus, fantastic card, especially if you can cast another enchantment on the same turn as Nylea's Colossus, which actually happens quite often. You'd be surprised. Sanctum Weaver. This is a mana dork I kept. Excuse me. Add mana where it's the number of enchantments that you have. Scavenging Ooze I kept because, one, it just is a creature that gets bigger. It's a 2/2 for 2, and paying 1 green mana in order to exile, basically just shut down any recursion decks is fantastic. So, Citizen Champion, yeah, $7 for this card I feel is very high. I ended up cutting it because it doesn't have anything else, so you would have to give it trample in order to make it work. But there's so like the problem that I have with, at least with what Prof's enchantment choices were that so many enchantments gave creatures trample, which most of them are going to go to Thrun, which already innately has trample, and so therefore I'm not all that interested. So Citizen Champion, like, yeah, you can pump it up, like, and it works out pretty well. I ended up cutting a lot of the enchantments that give trample because my commander innately has trample, and so therefore there was no need for a Citizen Champion to just grow bigger, and especially at $7. Shigeki I absolutely love. It's a great card. It's also an enchantment, which is fantastic. Tanuki Transplanter, also a really great card. It has, whenever it attacks, it doesn't even have to do combat damage, so if something were to happen and it doesn't do combat damage, it's fine. It's you still getting that green mana. So like at the bare minimum, even though it is a reconfigure of 3, you're going to get 5 green mana from that. Thrun the Last Troll. This was something that I was really thinking about cutting because Thrun Breaker of Silence is so difficult to get rid of that really, at most, I was like maybe casting him for 7 mana. I don't think I've ever had to cast him for 9 because most players do not run green removal. Like, they may run board wipes, but like you're only going to see like 1, maybe 2 board wipes. Like it's not that big of an issue. However, Thrun the Last Troll has his uses, especially if there is like Thrun the Breaker of Silence gets targeted by something else that kind of like puts them out of commission for a while, or what have you. Thrun the Last Troll, or maybe you just don't get that 5th mana for whatever reason, and you want to just like be casting something else. He's available. It's a 4/4 for 4, and you can regenerate him, which is fantastic. So he can survive board wipes, which is really nice. For doing Enchantress, this is great because it allows you to draw a card. Yavimaya Enchantress is much like Citizen Champion, where it's like, well, okay, you get bigger, but like, what else are you gonna do for me? So what I did do, so we can go to creatures, is in place, because we went from 17 creatures to 20. So we did add a few more. Is we added Arasa, the Endless Web. This is an enchantment, which falls in line with the rest of our deck. And whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/2 green spider creature token with reach. So one of the big problems with green decks is that you have no access to deal with flyers. Arasa takes care of this, and she does it tenfold. So who has the most like flyers in the game? Blue decks. What are they going to be doing the most? Instants or sorceries. Like, Arasa solves all of this. She's a fantastic card. She's 49 cents. Like, just great pickup. Totally better than something like Arbor Elf or Acidic Slime. And yeah, she's a 3/5 for 4 mana. She has reach herself, and yeah, she just creates a bunch of spiders that you can just keep to defend. Second, I added Defiler of Vigor, because why the hell not? So it's a 6/6 for trample for 5. You can pay Phyrexian Green if you want, for every green spell, green permanent spell, I should say. And then when you cast a green permanent spell, every other creature you control gets +1/+1. Now, granted, I will say that the way that I've built this deck, you don't normally have a whole lot of creatures. You may have like 2 or 3, along with Defiler Vigor. So like, you're not pumping a whole bunch of creatures, but you are giving creatures that +1/+1, and anything that's a permanent is now cheaper to cast. So all of your enchantments now cost, any green mana that you would normally cast, spend in order to cast them. You can spend life in order to do so, and there's absolutely a ton to make this a lot cheaper than it already is. So Fire the Vigor, fantastic card. It's really been a great add to here. Granted, he's not the cheapest card, but 649 I think is not bad. Destiny Spinner has also helped out quite a bit. It's a 2/3 for 2, and creature and enchantment spells that you control cannot be countered. Great for any of that blue shenanigans. Eidolon of Blossoms and Elvish Mystic we have here. Eternal Witness I added because I really like Eternal Witness. It allows me to return spells such as Ram Through. So like, I can clinch the game with Ram Through, or Rafello's Gift, and just recur a bunch of other enchantments that I may have lost throughout the game. So Elvish Witness, Eternal Witness, great card. Forgotten Ancient we've covered. I've added Generous Visitor, and this has been something that I've kind of thought about maybe cutting, but I'm keeping it right now because I don't have that many 1-drops on here, and it does work. Like, it does have pretty good synergy with this deck. So whenever I can cast an enchantment spell, I put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So it works really well with Cameo of Transience, which is a 2/2 with trample, and whenever an enchantment is put into my graveyard, at the end of the step I can return it to my hand. But like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm a little bit disappointed, but at the same time, it is a 1-drop, and I kind of have to keep that in mind. So far, it's keeping in. Kadama the Westry. This has actually been something I'm actually pretty proud of adding in here. So it's 3 mana for a 3/3 with reach, and modified creatures you control have trample, which, sure, okay, like, fine. Defiler Vigor will basically just like make every creature that I have modified, and then everything is now has trample. But the big thing is, whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tab, then shuffle. So essentially, this allows me to ramp even harder. It is 3 mana. It doesn't take much to allow this to get out of control. And this is also like a reason why I cut the number of lands that I did, because you have other, like, alternatives to like have a bunch of lands that you're going to draw. You just put them into the battlefield tapped, because a Kadama of the Westry allows you to do that. Nihilius Colossus and Sanctum Weaver are the same. Seraph the Viper's Fang. So, other tapped creatures you control have Death Touch. Other untapped creatures you control have Hexproof. I specifically brought her in because of the Hexproof ability, and you can also pay 1 and tap her in order to untap target creature or land you control. I do like the fact that the interaction between both Death Touch and Trample, because then you can only deal one. You only have to deal 1 damage to every blocker that you have with Death Touch. It hasn't come up that much because Thrun is just so ginormous as to begin with, but needless to say, but giving all of your other supporting cast Hexproof really does help. Scavenging Ooze, Shigeki, Tanuki Transplanter, we've already talked about. Thrun, the last troll, we've already talked about. Toski, this is something I love. Toski, he is probably the bestest squirrel out there. May not be the best in this deck, and there may be some reason to cut him here. The reason being is that he's a 1/1 indestructible, attacks every turn if able. So you have a 1/1 indestructible blocker the first turn that you cast him, and then every other turn he's going to be attacking. Problem is that, like, at least I've been running to, is like, you don't want to attack opponents because usually they get some sort of benefit for blocking, such as lifelink or what have you. However, his second ability, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. In practice, like, this is really nice. Like, you can negotiate so that you're allowed to draw cards. Also, if there's any sort of board wipes, Toski just innately sticks around, which is really nice. Like, so say for instance that the player right before you causes an entire board wipe, you still have at least have Toski, and then he's going to allow you to draw a card and help you rebuild your board state. But as far as I've seen, the most I've ever drawn with Toski is about like maybe 2 cards per turn. Like it's so 4 mana for a 1/1 indestructible. Like, there could be an argument to be made to cut Tusky for something a little bit better. Elven Wall Tracker. So there are a lot of fight mechanics in Prof's deck. I think this is a great alternative here. So it is a 1-drop. It's a 1/1. You pay 2 mana and tap. Target creature you control fights another target creature. And guess what? If it's on your turn, Thrun is invulnerable. So yeah, there's a lot of silly nonsense you could do with Elven Wall Tracker. Especially getting rid of some of the supporting casts from the opposing side. So, and then Verduran Enchantress is just a draw engine. So, moving on to sorceries. Prof has Primal Might, Regrowth, Raphello's Gift, and Soul's Majesty. I decided to move a lot of the mana dorks into Cultivate, which I think is just overall a better card. Kept Raphello's Gift and Regrowth on here. I really liked Soul's Majesty, but yeah. So here's the issue. Return of the Wild Speaker, yeah, it's a $4 card, but it's instant speed. And it has another use, and it's the same mana cost as Soul's Majesty. So, like, if someone manages to target Thrun and remove him or whatever, you can cast Return of the Wild Speaker and draw just an absolute ass ton of cards. Whereas Soul's Majesty, you don't have that option. Like, you have to play it after you've buffed up Thrun. So that was at least my thought process on it. Could be mistaken, but like that's why I just decided to go with Return of the Wild Speaker here. Yeah. As far as instance for Prof's deck, he has Ancient Animus, which has an additional fight mechanic on here. So you put a +1/+1 counter. If it's legendary, it fights another creature. Frozen Grip, Primal Bellow, which target creature gets +1/+1 for each forest you control. Great card. Ram Through, which I'm absolutely in love with. Ranger's Guile, and Silk Guard. So, what did I choose for instance? For one, there wasn't a whole lot of interaction. So I added a Beast Within. So, Beast Within destroys target permanent, and then creates a 3/3 beast creature token. Fantastic card. I don't think anyone is going to disagree with that one. Crop Rotation. So Crop Rotation is basically a tutor for a specific land, and the only downside is that you have to sacrifice another land in order to tutor. I'm totally fine with this, and as you can see here, I've actually added both a Reliquary Tower, Rogue's Passage, and Witch's Clinic. So Rogue's Passage was already in here, but having both Reliquary Tower and Witch's Clinic, I think is worth having a Crop Rotation. Allows me to tutor the Reliquary Tower if I know I'm going to be drawing about 20 cards, or if I'm like running low on health, I can tutor the Witch's Clinic and then give my commander lifelink in order to kind of keep myself around. Hunter's Insight. Very surprised that this was not included. It is 79 cents. Choose target creature you control. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker this turn, draw that many cards. It is instant speed. Before combat damage resolves, you cast this. And assuming that the defending player has nothing else that they can do, you're going to draw like an absolute crap ton of cards. Like anywhere from, you pay 3 mana and you can draw like 5-10 cards. So I love this card. I don't know why it was not originally included, but it is something I think should works very well in this deck. And then I also included Inscription of Abundance. So I really like this card and was actually one of the first things that I included in here. So for 2 mana, you can choose one and it's either put 2+1/+1 counters on target creature. Target player gains X life, where it's the greatest power of creatures you control, they control, or target creature fights another target creature you don't control. So all 3 of these are fantastic, and the kicker is only 3 mana to play all 3. Especially in a Thrun deck, like you have the ability to put +1, like 2+1/+1 counters onto Thrun. You have the ability to fight, so like you destroy another player's target creature, and then you're just gonna gain life based on his power. So like there's no downsides for it, and for 5 mana that's fantastic. There's only been a few times that I've actually like only had, like my back is against the wall and the only thing I do is pay 2, but you know, having that option open is also really great. Crossing Grip, destroy target artifact or enchantment, and it splits second. Especially that like there's no way to do any counter spells or anything like that. Ramp Through, obviously really good card. Return of the Wild Speaker we've talked about. So Tyvar's Stand, I keep going back and forth on this. So Silk Guard is pay X and a green. So it's the same cost as Tyvar's Stand. Put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures you control, and then auras, equipment, and modified creatures you control gain hexproof until end of turn. Tyvar's Stand is target creature gets +X/+X and gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. So I'm kind of torn on this right now. I'm using Tyvar's Stand, and the reason why is like the biggest fear that I have in this deck is that it's going to be some sort of board wipe, and so being able to keep something on the board is going to be really nice, whereas Silk Guard is not going to be able to do that because it only provides hexproof, and board wipes are non-targeting, so hexproof is not going to matter. However, so the fact that it's not just one individual creature, it is many. So like this is great protection against like something like Casualties of War or like Tear Asunder for your auras or equipment or something like that. So I could definitely see the merit of including Silk Guard over Tyvar's Stand. So we're still working on that one. Artifacts. We've already talked about Arcane Signet being completely worthless here. And then everything else. Strata Scythe. Like, it's okay. The problem is, like, it's basically a Blanchwood armor. But it is 6 mana in order to do everything. So my thinking was that this deck has issues with leaving yourself vulnerable. So lifelink would be a really good mechanic to have in order to keep yourself healthy while Thrun is tapped. So Basilisk Collar was like by far the easiest solution for that problem. One, equipped creature gets Death Touch and Lifelink. We've already talked about how Death Touch and Trample have a very interesting interaction where every creature that blocks only has to take 1 damage and for it to be destroyed. And so with it being Trample, that means that there is a ton of damage that's going to be coming over to your opponents. And that lifelink is just going to keep you healthy, because Thrun easily gets up to like in the double digits of 12, 15, 20 power. It's not that difficult to do so. Blackblade Reforged. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each land you control. It's an easy equipment, especially when you're attaching it to legendary creatures. Like nothing said. Fire Striker, same thing. It's it has 2 of an equipped class and everything now. Or equipped creature has double strike. Like, what more do you want? Niddlesys is a new equipment that I added. Basically, this was the replacement for a Thrun Power Suit. So Thrun Power Suit is equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each or an equipment attached to it and has Ward 2. Niddlesys is equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and enchantment you control. Doesn't have to be equipped to it. And it's its own weapon, so...
All right, thumbs up. Ready, guys? Let's do this. Leroy!
Hey!
Dragon!
3. Thank you so much for the raid. How you doing, man? So yeah, Niddlesys, I think, is just a better version of Thrun Power Suit, because basically has the same benefits. It's just, it doesn't have to be attached to the creature, and it creates a germ that already has the benefits, so you don't immediately have to equip it to receive the benefits. Yeah, apparently I just have to put my Switch on a VPN. Last artifact that I included is Sword of the Animus. This is something that I just kind of added in here. Maybe we'll see how it works out. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, and whenever it attacks, you can put a basic land. So it's just more a ramping equipment. So nothing too crazy about that. As far as enchantments go, heading towards the end of this, we have Abundance, which is fantastic, especially once you have gotten all the lands that you need. You can basically select it. All of your card draw is going to be non-land, and then it doesn't, basically it just cycles all of the lands that are totally unnecessary at this point to the bottom of your library, and then all your draws are going to be non-land spells, which is fantastic. Alpha Authority I kept in because why not? Enchant creature has hexproof and cannot be blocked. Can't be blocked by more than one creature. Ancestral Mask. I'm not a big fan of this art, but that's okay. But enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each other enchantment in play. This includes enchantments on the opponent's side. So make sure you're aware of that. This is where we're gonna diverge. So Prof kept Audacity in here, which is 79 cents. Enchanted creature, it gets +2/+0 and trample. Whenever it is put into the graveyard, you draw a card. Good card. Totally understandable why it's in here. I think we can do better. So I did Asceticism. So for 5 mana, it's an enchantment. Creatures you control cannot be targets of spells or abilities or opponent's control. Essentially just giving Thrun's avoidance to every other creature you have. And then also you can pay 2 and regenerate target creatures. So if there is a board wipe, you have the ability to keep your creatures alive. Blanchwood Armor we kept. And then we have Boar Umbra. So I went ahead and replaced it with Bear Umbra. So this is a $10 card. It is more expensive. But instead of +3/+3 and giving it total armor, it is +2/+2 whenever it attacks. Untap out lands you control. This was included in his recommendations if you wanted to upgrade the deck. I totally agree with this. This is a fantastic card and definitely worth the upgrade if you are willing to swing it. Blanchwood Armor, great. Gives +1/+1 for each forest you control. Then we have Cartouche of Strength. So Cartouche of Strength is if it's a legendary. No, I'm sorry. When it comes in the battlefield, you may have enchanted creature fight target creature an opponent controls, and then it gets +1/+1 and trample. I don't know. I was kind of underwhelmed because it's 3 mana at sorcery speed for a fight mechanic, and then you give it +1/+1 and trample. Thrun already has trample innately, and just giving it +1/+1 is kind of lame. So, I went with Dormant Grove instead. At the beginning of your upkeep on your turn, at the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then, if that creature has toughness 6 or greater, transform it. So then you transform it to Gnarled Grove Strider, which is Vigilance, 3/6 Treefolk, and other creatures you control have Vigilance. So now, all of a sudden, your commander that has been swinging every turn, you give it a +1/+1 counter, which, by the way, Thrun is a 5/5. You give him a +1/+1 counter, he's a 6/6, this flips over. And now all of a sudden your commander has Vigilance and can just swing with impunity and then block for you later. This is a fantastic card. I really wish that this was something that Prof had picked up on. Because there's a ton of synergy on this. Enchantress's Presence, I believe that's already in here. Basically, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you draw a card. Exploration, it is an expensive card. However, it really has its merits, especially in this format where you're going to be drawing a bunch of cards. Allows you to play an additional land on each of your turns. You're going to be drawing a lot of cards, playing a bunch of enchantments. Like, there's never a bad time to just play an additional land. Fight Rigging. I really like this card, but it also may be on the chopping block. So I like it because it is an enchantment. At the beginning of your combat on your turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature control. And then if you control a creature with power 7 or greater, you may pay an exile card of Hideaway 5. Like, I really like this card. I really want it to work. However, it's not been like the most enthusiastic card. It does the thing that it sets out to do, but it's not like super fantastic. So he has Fertile Ground on here. I do not know why. Fertile Ground is enchant land. Whenever enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional 1 mana of any color. You are mono green. You don't need any additional colors. This is a worse version of Wild Growth. Gift of Paradise is even worse. I understand. Yes, it adds to your enchantment count. However, I think there are better enchantments out here For instance, I have 28 enchantments, and I think that all of these are better. But Gift of Paradise is even worse than Fertile Ground, because it is, you gain 3 life, you enchant a land, and so you're paying 3 to add 2 mana of any one color for the tap. So you either get to choose tap for 1 green or tap for 2 green. And so basically you're paying an additional mana for 3 life, which is not worth it. So, Gift of Paradise, I think it should be the first thing that should be axed, and then you just find a better enchantment on here. So, for my recommendation, I went with Garruk's Uprising. It's a $4 card. Whenever it enters the battlefield, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. Guess what our commander is? Power 4 or greater. It's 5/5. And then when a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Like, it's great, especially with that. It's similar to Colossal Majesty, but it has immediate interaction here. And it also just gives all of your creatures trample, so anything that you may not already have trample innately, it's just going to go get it. So then we have Hydra's Growth, which is great. In Search of Greatness, fantastic. Indomitable Might, Keen Sense, Kendrith's Transformation. All of these are really good cards. So I have I definitely kept them in here. Indomitable Might has won me games just because I don't have, Thrun has Indestructible. He does not care if he doesn't kill something. He'll just swing in for victory. And the other thing is, this has Flash. So you swing in for lethal, and your opponent just puts up a ton of blockers, and then you throw this down and you say, nope, it's lethal. Feels pretty good. Prof even said that he thinks that Lure would probably be one of the first cards that he cuts. I tend to agree. As much fun as it would be to force an opponent to block with all of his support cast, you know that there's going to be some shenanigans that occur, and Lure, I think, is just going to be too clunky. And really, if instead of destroying their board state, you just swing in for victory, you might as well just swing in for victory. If they need to, your opponent is going to send their creatures to block. So probably just best to cut Lore. Ordeal of Nylea, it's a 2 mana, allows you to ramp. Fantastic card. Overgrowth is something that I actually ended up keeping because it's 3 mana for adding enchanting a land to add 3 mana per turn instead of 2 mana and giving you life. So definitely better than Gift of Paradise here. Just saying. But we also added another card here, Mark of Sakiko, which is very similar to Tanuki Transplanter, but a lot cheaper. So Mark of Sakiko is enchanted creature. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, add that much green mana. It does not cause mana burn until end of turn. It does not empty when phases end. So very similar to Tanuki Transplanter. Tanuki Transplanter does have the benefit of whenever you attack, it immediately then checks the creature's power to add that much green mana, versus this is It has to deal combat damage, so if there are some shenanigans that might occur, just gotta be wary about that. However, Mark of Sakiko has like really been one of the more ace cards in this deck, where you're just allowed to you attack, you do something like Hunter's Insight or Return of the Wild Speaker, you draw 20-30 cards, but you also then have Mark of Sakiko, which allows you to add 20 to 30 mana on here. Then all of a sudden you just take over the game. Ordeal of Nelia, Overgrowth, we talked about. Rancor, which I believe is in here as well. He included Prodigious Growth, which I don't understand. 6 mana in order to give a creature +7/+7 and trample. Whoop-de-doo. Like, not a big fan. We also didn't talk about Colossification. This is 7 mana in order to give a creature +20/+20. Sounds great. Like, totally would be all for it, except for that last part in there when it says, when Colossification enters the battlefield, tap enchanted creature. Well, guess what's going to happen when you cast this on Thrun or any creature that you control? You are enemy number 1. So unless this is a 1v1 now in Commander, every single opponent is going to be attacking you mercilessly. And guess what? Your commander is tapped and cannot block for you. So you have 3 turns, maybe. You have to go through 3 players' turns in order to utilize this. Like, that... I do not understand why this is even a card that's considered. Like, it's a fun card. It's hilarious to think that you could pump up a creature +20/+20. Like, I totally understand that. Like, now you have a Thrun that is swinging for lethal every turn. But you are leaving yourself wide open with this card. We have Rancor, which is enchant creature gets +2/+0 and trample. Whenever when it's put into the graveyard, it goes back to your hand. Fantastic card. We've definitely kept it here, especially it's 1 mana. It is an absurdly good card. Season of Growth, I've also kept in here. Also something I've oh, never mind. He has Seal of Primordium. So Seal of Primordium is an enchantment that you can sacrifice and destroy a target artifact or enchantment. I liked the card. In fact, I kept it for quite a while, but I decided, you know what? I have an issue with it. And the issue is that there's not a whole lot of enchantment or artifact removal in this deck, and having just one that is out there at all times just kind of, like, it can be farewell fodder. Like, there's a whole lot that, especially with stuff like Nilsys, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And so, like, I decided ultimately that we're just gonna kind of get rid of it. Like, there were better cards in here. 6 Sense, Snake Umbra, Spider Umbra, really good. Wild Growth, obviously really good. Wolf Willow, Haven, I'm not a big fan of, but I couldn't find anything else, like any replacements for it. So currently, right now, it's in here. So I ended up going with Season of Growth. And so Season of Growth is whenever a creature enters the battlefield under my control, you scry 1. And then whenever you cast a spell that targets a creature you control, draw a card. Well, I have 28 enchantments in here, and most of them are auras that are targeting creatures I control. So I'm going to be drawing a lot of cards. And if I don't, if I'm casting a creature, which is 20 creatures, I can at least scry. So 6 Sense is whenever a creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. Snake Sense, or sorry, Snake Umbra. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1. Whenever it deals combat damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. Spider Umbra gives it reach, which is really nice. And then this is a new update for me, and I'm still kind of like figuring it out. Like if between this one, Garruk's Uprising, and Colossal Majesty. So I think this is probably the best out of the three. And then I'm trying to decide if I want to keep Colossal Majesty or Garruk's Uprising. So whenever a creature enters the battlefield under my control, draw a card if its power is 3 or greater. Otherwise, you put 2 +1/+1 counters onto it. So basically, like anything like Arasta Defiler, Seraph, Nylea is going to be triggering the draw. Thrun will trigger the draw. My commander will trigger the draw. And then everything else is going to be getting +1/+1 counters on it. So, like, to me, I feel like it's a better Garruk. And then you just pump up your creatures innately as you cast them. The reason why I'm still thinking about Colossal Majesty is that, like, it's slower than the rest. So at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. So it's definitely slower, but in general, you're always going to have a creature with like power 4 or greater. Generally, like there may be some issues, but so my thinking is like Garruk's Uprising and Tribute to the World Tree. Like, yeah, like you're going to have that, you can cast that, and then like you have that immediate ability to cast like another creature that has like power 4 or greater or power 3 or greater in order to trigger these. But like, how often are you going to be doing that? Is it going to be more than once per turn? Probably not. So like maybe we replace Garruk's Uprising with Colossal Majesty. It's the same mana cost. Honestly, it's the same mana cost between all three of them. It's being in mono green, so I'm not like all that concerned about it. But I do kind of feel that Tribute to the World Tree is probably the best out of the three, because even if I don't have a creature with power 3 or greater coming into the battlefield, at least there's some additional interaction with it giving +2/+2 counters. So especially like something like Forgotten Ancient, which just gives the counters that it has to any other creature. Like, there's a whole lot of stuff you can do with that. Unnatural Might, fun card. At the beginning of each combat, it's not your combat, it's each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. So say someone creates a creature somehow bigger than Thrun, and you were worried and you have to block it. Doesn't matter. Like, you were 100% protected during each combat, because everything is going to grow double. So, fantastic card. Absolutely love it. And it's not a problem to cast it because you are mono green. And then the final card, and which is what I replaced Seal of Primordium with, and I know it is very expensive, but it is Nissa Ascended Animus. And the reason I did this is because even if I spend life in order to cast her, I am guaranteed at least one destroy artifact or enchantment. If I get her out for the full 7 mana, I can do the -7 and just give everything +1/+1 for each forest I control and gain trample. Usually that's a win con right there. But if not, like, she can probably destroy multiple artifacts and enchantments, or just be another body that my opponents will be forced to target because they don't want me destroying their artifacts or enchantments. So this is why I kind of felt like this was a little bit better than Seal of Primordium. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. It is 7 mana. I just happened to have 2 of her lying around, so that's why I kind of went with her. But yeah. So that's what we've done with Thrun. We can certainly do some other things, but I'm very happy with this deck and how it's kind of like turned out. Now, granted, we've gone far beyond what the original $45 was from the Professor's original deck, but we're nowhere near some of the decks that this that this has come up against and actually won. So I've been very happy with it. It does do very well. It ramps very well. Like, there's a lot of card draw, and it can be very explosive. Like, you bring out Thrun and they don't think anything of it. Like, okay, yeah, it's a 5/5. Like, I'll deal with that or whatever, or I'll just take the 5 commander damage, and then you bring out Fire Trigger, and then all of a sudden that 5 commander damage turns into 10 commander damage, and then you can buff them up with another +1/+1, and like, that's lethal. Or you get Hunter's Insight in there, or Return of the Wild Speaker, which gives you just like a ton of card draw, and a lot of the ramping enchantments here, such as Mark of Sakiko. So you swing in, you're doing 30 some odd damage that they have to block, otherwise they're going to lose. And even if they do block, their entire board state is devastated, and you got Marcus Sakiko. All of a sudden you have like 30 cards in your hand and 30 mana that you can do, just do what you want with. So yeah, this deck is a ton of fun. It's simple. There's not like, you don't have to think like about what the other players are doing, because you just kind of like, you do your own thing, and usually it's just like kind of brute force tactics. So very, very happy with this. Certainly hope you guys enjoyed this. If you have any suggestions or comments, like, be certainly happy to discuss them, and yeah, let me know if there's something that I've missed and you think would work out better in this deck. So anyway, with that, I think we're gonna go ahead and call it a night, and we'll look forward to Tears of the Kingdom tomorrow. See if anyone's on.